Okay, welcome everybody to the council meeting of June 5th, 2023. We've already had a land acknowledgement. Thank you very much for this evening. With this, I would like to have a motion to approve the agenda. I'd like to add an item to 13, discussion regarding flags. I sent you some information this week on that. So that's to number 13. Okay. Item number 13. With that, I'll take a motion to adopt the amended agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Schuken, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So we have a presentation this evening. Welcome, Fire Chief Dunlop. Very timely.
Thank you. We do have a, sorry it wasn't in your agenda packet, but there's a printout of the slides in case you can't see them.
Thank you.
Pass those along. Good evening. I was asked to come and follow up just from my previous presentation on emergency operations and just kind of touch base a little bit on how we're going to build resiliency and how we are building resiliency here in Metchosin, and then to touch on some current issues that we have here looking at this year. I don't know if I use these. Clearly. It's not.
Sometimes turn it around.
Point it towards me. Oh. Thank you. So I just want to touch very quickly on 4 points. What are our greatest risk factors here in Metchosin and how we come to that conclusion? What are we currently doing to increase the capacity and build resiliency in Metchosin? What are our local challenges here? And then just kind of a little bit of an update on some exciting new things that are coming down the pike here soon. So the province actually requires us to do what's called an HRBA. Now this particular one, I'm sorry, it's pretty small there and you can't really see it very well on your printout either. This one's actually from 2017. There is a new process that's online the province requires us to do, and we're working on it. It does take quite a bit of time, but the end results are still very similar. We have done a draft of it, we haven't done the final one, we're still working on that. And basically what it does is it takes a look after asking a whole bunch of questions about where you're located and your population and just a whole bunch of components to it. And it calculates out the frequency versus the severity of a variety of different events. So we're talking hundreds of different events, emergencies, and runs through a calculation and it gives you your risk profile. So that's your hazard risk vulnerability analysis, your HRVA. So this one is actually from 2017, as I mentioned. And it hasn't changed a lot since then. Our number one risk, surprise, surprise, is fire or wildfire. Number two is earthquake. Critical infrastructure failure is another one. And that, yes, that includes the fire hall, but other things like transportation, culverts, we're talking communication lines, that sort of thing. Severe weather events, and then some kind of a dangerous goods spill, whether on land or on the water. So those are our highest risks. And that is where we spend a lot of our time or focus on trying to respond to those effectively. So we don't worry too much about, tornadoes here, right? That's not a big, huge concern for us. So, what are we doing currently to increase our capacity? So we've been very successful in some grants, and we are planning. That's about all that we can do right now is plan. And I know the district is also working on some plans, and we're trying to get all these to kind of all work together toward the goal of keeping Metchosin resilient and safe and ensure that we understand the capacity that we have here of the rural nature of Metchosin and actually utilizing that to our benefit. We do have the ongoing fire smart program that's been going on now for several years, and we'll hopefully continue with that. We are doing a disaster risk reduction climate adaptation plan this year, as well as an extreme heat assessment plan this year. 2 different plans, they're happening. Our evacuation plan, we had that completed last year. We are also doing an emergency notification plan this year. Now these are all funded by grants, I might add that as well. The Community Wildfire Resiliency Plan was done last year, along with one for Chan First Nation. The emergency plan was done several years ago. We need to get that updated, hopefully this year and next year. Same with our communications plan. Our emergency social services plan, pretty current, always constantly updating that one. And we're currently working on a new program this year is to get all of our emergency services together on one page and doing a training program for that. And also exciting that we're working on, hopefully soon, is a volunteer handbook. And that would be just an ongoing, when we have new volunteers that are on board, whether that's the fire department or the emergency program, emergency support services, whatever that might be, a nice handbook on how to move forward with that and what that covers. And then really exciting for next year, we're going to be working on our extended operations unit, which I will leave that one there to talk about, present that at another point in time. Some of our local challenges, resources and people, and not saying that our people or their lack of resources is a challenge per se, but it's getting the information out there and connecting and collaborating. Because when we talk about resiliency, we talk about networks and getting people involved. And as you know, we're very focused on volunteers here, but volunteers are kind of busy, and they're who do you ask to do something but a busy volunteer, right? So they're hard to come by when we're asking for a lot of dedication and a lot of time. So sometimes people and resources can be very difficult to come by. And reaching people, whether that's via social media or phone or that process of that marketing piece has become a bit of a challenge for the emergency program. Funding, we rely on grant funding. As long as that continues, it's great. But if we get all this stuff, all these plans, they all have recommendations on what we need to do, what changes we need to make. Sometimes, in the future, that may become a roadblock and a challenge for us. And then policies and bylaw. And not that, again, that it's something we can't overcome, but there are lots of challenges and bylaws that we are existing that we would like to see, some consideration to adhering to some of these new recommendations and some of the plans that are coming forward. And you're already doing that by, we see that in the climate change plan that you've recently completed. So. And then just a couple of updates here. 2023 current wildfire situation. The total fires to date here in the coastal, and this is from BC Wildfire, are 48 fires. That's just here in the coastal area, not including any other part of BC. And to give you a comparison, 2022, the same date, we had 6 fires. And the average, 10-year average, is 35 fires on that date. So we're well above that. We did get our first extreme danger rating today. So in Metchosin, we've had now 4 brush fires already this year, and significant ones. And those are actually the pictures of them. And I put the pictures in there because you can see where they are, which is very scary. They're quite a ways away from actual roads and such, right? One was actually arson. A couple of them were open burns, and I know that's not allowed anymore, but that had actually embedded underground into the root system and started 30 feet away from where the open burn was. So we just really need to keep in mind open burning is very dangerous if it's not taken care of properly. And we're now at an extreme. Well, we're still at high, but we will probably be moving to extreme by the end of the week. This is really an exciting program. I just want to give a quick update on this. One of the challenges in Metchosin, as kind of previously noted, is communication and getting word out to the public. So when there's an emergency, let's just say, using a tsunami as an example, we use our One Call Now program, which costs under $500 a year, and people register for that. And what happens is that we hit the recording, and it automatically dials everybody on that list. And so we did a practice a couple of years ago, right before COVID, and we were able to get hold of everybody on that list within 45 minutes. So that was great. We now have a new one that we've just started this year, and that's called Peasy, and that's also used by most of the South Island here. And it's just another alerting process, and this one actually goes married with Alertable, the app the other icon there. And anybody can sign up or download the Alertable app. And what we do on PZ then is that we can send the alerts for this area. So it can, register on your phone and beep or do whatever. It's just another way to get a hold of people in an emergency. So that is costing us a little bit more money. It's $400 a year, but that's coming out of our EOC budget, and certainly a great benefit, I think. And we're all going to get to try this out on June 24th. Okay, that's June. June 24th, we're going to have a notification exercise. So we are going to use both the One Call Now and the PZ Alertable on June 24th at 11 o'clock. And I'll be sending out more notification on that. So, any questions on that?
Thank you very much for that timely update. Councillor Donaldson.
2 questions. How many people are on the One Call Now?
Well, it's hard to say how many people, it's how many numbers, right? So we have approximately 5,000 people on there. And we have a couple different mailing lists for different purposes. And so email addresses are different than phone numbers. So we have about 5,000 phone numbers, and we have about 2,500 email addresses.
Okay. And my second question is, do we have any plans to put up tsunami signs so people know the route to avoid, or where sometimes you'll see signs saying this is a tsunami area, or...
Yeah, so we have tsunami signs down at our beaches. We don't have a specific route because we don't have a specific route. It get above 14 feet is really what it amounts to. And the other challenge we have with signs is that they keep getting taken down. So I don't believe there's one down at Sangay anymore because it's been taken down so many times. So, bit of a challenge.
Councillor Shukin.
Thanks, Chief Dunlop. On the question of fire, so this is maybe a broader question, how easy is it for you to call in air support?
It's super easy if you want to pay for it.
Okay, well, that's good. I guess I'm thinking about, we all feel it, like every day we're drying out, every year we're drying out, and the risk of a fire commencing and spreading very quickly is quite real. And just, you call it, or the experience is these can happen in remote areas, so air support might be in order, but I hear there's challenges maybe with it. Okay.
There are, yes. Typically for air support specifically, they won't drop their load typically on homes and that sort of thing. We were very fortunate if you were around when Pedder Bay in 2004, I think. We had the big fire down at Pedder Bay. They happened to be at another fire up at Dedas Lake, so they came and did a load here, which saved our bacon. Gotta be telling you, that was broom down there and going uphill. It saved that pretty little yellow house up on the hill there. So what happens? We don't personally, like the municipality does not call out the helicopter. Otherwise, we end up paying for it at a very, very high rate. So we have an automatic response when there's brush fire. We have a mutual aid agreement with BC Wildfire Service. So they send their crews in. They go up in a helicopter, just take a look and see what they need and what is appropriate for any kind of water deployment or foam or whatever it might be. Yeah. Gotcha. So it really depends on the situation. They will make that call whether or not they need it. Now they do keep, not right now, I don't believe, they might have one helicopter here that can deploy any kind of retardant, but most of them right now are all up in the interior.
Okay. And I thought I was seeing air tankers at the airport at some point during the summer.
You might have been. They move them all around.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Great.
So,
thank you.
yeah.
Okay. Councillor Gray.
Thanks so much, Chief Dunlop. Do you want us all, meaning everybody in Metchosin, to get on these 2 systems? Is that our goal?
Yeah, so there's one email or one place that you need to, or one action you need to take, and that's to go to metchosinemergencyprogram.ca, and on the front page there it says sign up for emergency notification. I actually just sent an email out yesterday, so if you did not receive that, then you're not on the list. So highly recommend that you do that, and that one email to me gets you on all 3 systems.
Thank you. I think I did the email.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? I've got one question regarding the HVRA risk assessment. So fires number one, then earthquake and structure fires. And so we typically, in this age, we've deployed to other areas with a greater need for firefighting than we have at the time. What can you say, since we've got citizens in the room, about when we send trucks and fighters away, what we're left with? If you can give people some reassurance there.
Yep. So just recently at Fort St. John, they had a severe fire situation, and we happened to be at a Wild Urban Interface Fire conference, and they went around the room and said, hey, we're panicking, we need people up there. And so they asked for our tender. And so we were able to send our tender, and our neighboring community, East Souk, has an extra tender that we were able to bring back here and it's in our hall. And then, as you saw in one of those pictures there was a field there, and that we actually used one of their tenders at that call. So we work very closely with our neighboring communities to shift and share. Yeah. And we do have an automatic mutual aid now for fires, much like we do for structured fires. We have that automatic mutual aid in place right now for the summer months for our mutual aid partners. So they automatically come when that page goes out, they automatically come.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank
very
you.
informative. Thank you again. Okay, before we move on, I forgot to include the pink. This is a letter from Ravi Kahlon, the minister at the province, the Minister of Housing, and so that's regarding the 47 communities that may be identified, and some other documentation regarding the housing targets. So if we could add this through a motion right now to the agenda as correspondence.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Gray. Discussion, seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Remind me about that, will you? So I don't forget. Okay, first on the list, we've got the adoption of the minutes. This is on page 3 of your council agenda. Oh, absolutely. That wasn't on purpose. Okay, backtrack. We've got such a lot to do. I was trying to kickstart this. Sorry about that. So we have public participation. We have 4 minutes for each of us. And if you could state your name and your street, that'd be great. And we're going to have respectful comments.
Of course.
Always?
Yeah, always.
Thank you.
I mean, I apologize for when I didn't, when I was disrespectful, because you all know this is a passionate topic of mine. I'm concerned that Metchosin still wants to drag its feet on the housing issue. Now, I heard Steve Gray advocating that we should densify over there. And when we densify over there, and we have multi-million-dollar houses over here, what we end up with is ghettos. We'll have 4plexes in Royal Bay, and they'll be all packed to the nines, and those people will be looking over here at Metchosin going, multi-million-dollar homes. Now, what happens when you have ghettos and multi-million-dollar homes? You have crime. So these are consequences that Metchosin is going to face if they keep dragging their heels and don't want to participate. Another thing that'll happen is, I don't know if someone was complaining on Facebook that they noticed human poop on their beach or on their trail or where it was. Now, when people are forced to live in their car because housing prices are too astronomical and they can't afford their rent, what they do is they park at their beaches, or they park at the end of your driveway, or they park wherever, and they wander out and they take a dump. And, excuse my pun, but they don't give a crap because they live in their car, right? It's not their priority. They don't care. They're homeless, right? They have a job. They make enough money to pay for a car, right? They're those people. So that's another consequence, is you're going to have human poop everywhere. Another consequence, because the consequences are almost endless if we start getting into it, is in a few years, I won't be here. I was asked to be on the agricultural subcommittee, and what I thought to myself was, why am I going to make a commitment to something that I won't be here for in 4 years, hopefully. Not hopefully, but practically. Because as a struggling farmer, as soon as I have enough money to own a farm, I'm going to look for a farm. And if a farm costs me $1 million, well, I'm going to look for a farm probably that's about $300,000 to get in the door, and that's not going to be here. So your consequence of dragging your heels will be a self-defeating prophecy. If you want to call Metchosin a farming community, you're going to have to figure out a way to keep farmers here. You're going to have to keep young farmers here. You're going to have to come up with some kind of succession plan for old farmers who want to leave their land to a young farmer, or you have no argument about being a farming community. And another consequence of that is if people aren't looking to farm out here, well, the only people who are going to be buying out here are developers. And so when the multi-million-dollar houses that someone passes away and their young child says, well, I can start paying off my parents' deferred mortgage, but I have a house in Saskatchewan, so why don't I just sell it? Well, who has the money to buy the land? Developers, not farmers. So it's gone. So that's another consequence, is you're just opening it up for developers. And if anyone decides that they should use arguments like there's not enough water out here or something like that to say that this is a justification for not having densification, whatever we have to do, whatever you want to call it, it's basically saying that we don't have enough water for the people who live on this planet and they're being denied a human right, and we need to come up with a solution for that as a community. Thank you. I hope the consequences. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak?
Could I ask people to stand at the mic so you can do it?
Yeah, Katie, go ahead and, speak right into the mic. Thank you. Bring the mic, pull it down.
Okay, Katie Nelson, I have a loud voice in this small body. And unfortunately, many questions. So one, first of all, what's happening with the broom bash? Are we going to have a broom bash? Where can I take the broom? I have people like Doug Ruth who have huge broom bushes along the side of their road on Taylor Road. You'd be happy to have me take it away. Where can I take it to? Are we going to have that? Okay. Second, road safety. When I see a really, really bad road situation in Metchosin, who do I just run to Public Works? Do I just talk to you about it? I mean, I was at Chapel Heights and Metchosin Road this evening, and I wanted to make that left to head into Metchosin. The bush that has created the blind spot there has grown so much over the last few months. Somebody's going to die. So that's, I think, a really critical one. And I don't think it would take much time and effort to make a difference there. So I would address that. Then last of all, in terms of increasing density in Metchosin, if we housed firefighters, if we had something in the fire hall where firefighters could live in apartments, would that be helping to increase our density? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fire Chief?
May I speak to all three of those
Please.
questions? All right. For starters, yes, and I apologize if you didn't get the email. I did send out an email regarding the Broom Bash 2023. So you can dump all your stuff at the back of the fire hall, where you have been already, so that's great. Connect with our fire...
That was with your permission, it wasn't I just did it.
Oh. You're the only one who's asked permission, Katie. I love you for it. Yes, you can feel free to dump that broom back there. We don't really encourage driving it unless, or, transporting broom unless you can have it really well tarped down, because we don't want to spread that seed at all. So we are collaborating with our Fire Smart program to come and do some on-site chipping. So coordinate with the pod, with Gloria, and she will help connect you.
Great.
Okay? Regarding the roadside, if I can, I know I'm not Public Works, but I would highly recommend, if I can, to everybody to just send an email to info@metchosin.ca and do a PCR, a public communication report. Tell them the bushes are too, because unless they know about it, they can't do anything about it. So that's the fastest way to get action, is to call or send an email to the district, let them know the location and what the situation is, and they will put it on their list of to-dos in priority. The other regarding housing of firefighters. I only have 5 minutes, right? So I think it's a fabulous idea. It would, I don't know about answering the question to whether or not it ticks the box for increasing density. However, there are some other huge financial benefits to housing firefighters at the hall. Once you get 24, if you have people living there who are responding to calls, you can significantly change the grading for your home insurance and decrease the cost for your insurance. So just throwing that out there as in that planning, and hopefully it'll be included in the feasibility study.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else for public participation?
Patty Whitehouse, Rocky Point Road. With the nice weather, as I understand, I haven't heard these directly, but I'm hearing rumors of complaints about dogs on the beach, and dog poop on the beach, and the knee-jerk reaction of dogs should be banned from the beach. Well, I went out with Danny Buchanan's Poop Patrol this last Sunday on Taylor Beach, and yes, we found poop, dog poop. I don't think we found any human poop. But we also found beverage cans and other garbage. We also found the remnants of fires, plural. And I suspect that the dogs probably didn't either drop the beverage cans or start the fires. It's not the dogs that's the problem, of course, it's the irresponsible people. So the equitable response, rather than banning dogs from the beach, would be to close the beach to all users, and there would be no irresponsible people on the beach, and no fires, and no dog poop, and no beverage cans. But when I was down there with Danny and his other volunteers, which include, by the way, his children, I also saw people of all ages and in all kinds of groups, some of them with dogs, and all enjoying the beach with no conflict. All were under control, including the children. And I met people with dogs who were carrying their poop bags to remove them from the beach. Also found some of those bags, not from these particular people because the Poop Patrol took them, but also found some bags left near the parking lot. People's hearts were in the right places. There is no garbage can at the parking lot to leave them. We know why there is no garbage can at the parking lot, but I'll come back to that later. So it seems to me that the more appropriate response to complaints about dogs on the beach or anywhere else or any other of these sort of global complaints would be an education campaign to advise people of what is appropriate behavior, reinforced by monitoring and, where necessary, enforcement. The Dogs in Metchosin group, as this council knows, made recommendations towards reducing dog-related conflict in Metchosin, all of which were adopted by previous council. And the first steps taken with the bylaw amendments that is still in progress, but will come to its fruition. And it seems to me that it's time to take the next step, which to me looks like signage at beaches and other places that tells people what is required and is not required of them. And I wonder if council could creatively consider supporting additional measures, not just to educate in a broader sense, though that as well, but also to make compliance easier. We know why there is not a garbage can at Taylor Beach, because the existence of it was abused quite miserably. But could there perhaps be a designated place in the community core somewhere and a sign telling people that they can take their dog bags or other garbage there? Just an idea to consider. And I think that's, also, yes, this other thing. There's always the question about, where's the money going to come for signage or enforcement or any of these other things. I believe that the kinds of recommendations that the Dogs in Metchosin Working Group made could well qualify for both the COVID recovery funds, because we provided mental health support for people during COVID, very clearly, and from the Growing Communities funds. again, providing, as Councillor Gray pointed out, support for increased density in other communities.
Okay, thank you.
Mary?
Yeah. go
Sorry,
ahead.
I wonder if I could ask a question really quickly, and Patty, for you.
Go ahead.
So Patty, thanks very much for your work with Danny and the beach cleanup. How would you characterize the amount of garbage you picked up? Like a lot or modest amount? Or?
Garbage as opposed to dog poop? No, in other case, actually, it was a modest amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
But the fact that it's happening at all
Yeah.
is unfortunate.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. So the bylaw will be coming back. It's on the planner's pile. So that will be coming back probably to the community planning portfolio, but perhaps we can bring back those recommendations that was adopted by the previous council to the community planning portfolio. Because there was a number of different options that the Dogs in Metchosin Working Group had suggested for signage in their appendices, for instance. So we could order those and have them at the entrances to our parks. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. So that would be an action item. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, and thank you for letting me speak. I was online, I heard
So,
the conversation.
just
My
one-
name, my name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a sec. Oh, yeah. Bob Burgess, 3837 Duke Road. So I was listening to the comments about the treasurer's computer for the museum. First of all, I do want to thank you on behalf of the museum for approving that. But I thought I should explain why we were needing it and a little bit of the background. And I'm not a great public speaker, so I'll tend to talk in bullets and ask for expansion if you want. The treasurer's computer, though, treasurers change. We are a fairly complex society. We report to the CRA. We are a charitable registered society, so we have to fill in an annual report to that. We have to account for every expenditure and all our income. We also have a provincial sales tax. We're also reporting to them. We have an auditor, Sashi Kubicek, that reviews our books. So the thing is, as the treasurer moves on and treasurers change, and I'm currently the treasurer, the information from the past has to be following the society. If you have it split between personal computers and paper files, everything, things get lost, and we're struggling with that now. So that's the reason we're looking for that. The computer will follow. It's going to. When I move on, the computer with all the information will pass on to the next treasurer, and so on and so forth. The complexity, I do use spreadsheets, and I've got a monster of a spreadsheet that terrifies me and remind anybody else, which is the reason that we were looking for accounting software to make it much simpler to use and far more effective and frankly, far more reliable than what I'm calling together on a sort of bi-weekly basis. As for the $30,000 that we have that was raised, that's actually $31,000 at this point, down considerably from what it was earlier. We are basically self-insuring those buildings. They're your buildings. We have a $25,000 reserve fund for contingencies that are unanticipated. It's not something we spend. It is a contingency fund. If there's vandalism, if there's a fire. We've had damage on one of our steel doors on the museum. Somebody trying to break in. We're paying for that. There's no insurance. We're paying for that. We're covering that. That's what that purpose of that fund is. We try to keep it at that level. So you will always see something at that level for us.
We've got about 30 seconds left.
Well, okay. Now you shoot me off. Okay, so that's really all I can say. We restored the old school building. We raised $155,000. Part of it was a legacy, part of it was a large amount was grants that Jim McPherson, our president, was able to raise. We didn't call on the council for any money. We haven't drawn any money from the council at all on any of these restorations we've done. All the work on the Pioneer Museum has also been fully funded by either the bookstore, volunteers, and donations. So that was it. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to explain it further. But thank you very much for the computer. But that's how we're running the organization.
Thank you. Anybody else for public participation?
Sorry, go ahead.
Karen, Pierce Road, we're in the wrong place. I'd like to address the council. This council has talked at length about supporting farms, ALR land use, and farming in Metchosin. As a 22-year resident and a young farmer, I don't see this. I see council supporting residents who are concerned about change without thinking of our future as a farming community. If we're to keep Metchosin a viable and robust farming community, we need to support affordable and available rentals and land lease here. Encouraging young farmers, their laborers, and volunteers to live and work here is important to our future farming sustainability. Currently, it's virtually impossible to buy farmland here for young families. It's also extremely hard to find any affordable local rentals if you'd like to work here or volunteer for our local fire department. I know there are young people who wish to continue to live and work in our Metchosin community, but cannot. I'd like to see this council explore some creative housing ideas to encourage young, hardworking individuals to live, work, and volunteer in our community. Thank you.
Rebecca Ashcroft, Rocky Point Road. I just wanted to let the council know recently that laws have changed about mortgaging. And so if you are mortgaging anything that's worth over $1 million, even if you take a mortgage for less than $1 million, it often states in all Tier B lenders and half of Tier A, there's only 7 Tier A lenders like Scotiabank, BMO, things like that, that you cannot buy it as farmland. Just so that you're aware of that in our community. So if you do have something on your land that allows a rental or a sublet, they will allow or be able to remove the subject for farming from that. Just so you're aware.
Rebecca,
Yes.
can you state your last name again and your road?
Ashcroft, Rocky Point.
Great, thank you.
Sarah Metchosin Road, Sarah Anthony Metchosin Road, hopefully the last one for you guys and can continue on. Of course, I just want to comment about the new version of the draft and also read the letter from the Minister of Housing. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, regarding the draft letter, I'm a little disappointed that the only action that seems to be considered is looking at the vacation home rentals. Yeah, of course you should do this, but I just have to continue to say that I think that there is so much that Metchosin could do that would be fitting. And I mean, given the letter that the minister sent, I think we really need to think seriously about demonstrating what we can do to show that some of the options that would work in a rural community and maybe be a really good example of those things for other communities. Densification becomes such a strong and just overriding word. It doesn't have to mean high rises and, it doesn't have to mean Langford. It can mean our way. It can mean, like I said, tiny homes. It can mean communal farms. It can mean, maybe a small housing center for some of the workers here. It could mean a small seniors home place, something like that. There's just lots of options. And of course, the tiny homes again, which I'm just going to keep pushing because it seems so perfect, because they can go away if you don't want them after. So that's it. Sorry, a little bit not feeling good, so it kind of came out rambly. Thank you.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else for public participation?
Go ahead.
Hi, Sarah Korea, Eels Road. I'm a new resident in Metchosin here, and I've spent the past 6 months living in Gibsons on the Sunshine Coast, working on farms, developing my dream of living in connection to the land. I am 22 years old and I carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. We are in the midst of a climate crisis. We are in the midst of a housing crisis. What a housing crisis means is a population crisis. If nothing is done about it, look at the demographic in this room alone. What do you think Metchosin is going to look like 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now? That is what I am thinking about. Truly. If we want this farming community to stay a farming community, we need to be people focused. Not production focused, but people focused. I'm only here because I was able to receive affordable housing. Affordable housing seems to be going down, even though the housing crisis is going up. Doesn't really make sense to me, and I think we can do a better job. I look forward to learning how you guys work in the future, and I have hope that I can bring in more people my age here, and I have hope that we can see action taken to take steps towards building this community the way we all want it to be. We all want to live off our land. We all want to keep this small town, keep it alive, keep the farm alive, keep the people alive, and the only way we're going to do that is by inviting young people. Thank you.
Sarah, before you go, can you state your last name again and your street?
Korea Eels.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mayor and Council, thanks for allowing me to have an opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm speaking on the Good Neighbor bylaw. Unfortunately, in our neighborhood, we don't have a good neighbor. I'd like to thank staff. Last month, we had an incident in our neighborhood, and I phoned and made a complaint, and within 24 hours, bylaw enforcement had contacted me, and we had a good discussion. The bylaw, which is essentially the noise bylaw, has been unchanged since 1995. I certainly look forward to changes with regard to exemptions. Currently, for use of power equipment, and my neighbor likes to do this, you can run power equipment from 7 in the morning to 10 p.m. We live in a neighborhood. We've lived there for 35 years, and the demographics have changed. We have about 3 new families, all kids ranging from about 1 to about 12, and they go to bed early. And it's hard to go to sleep when there's somebody running a power saw or a backhoe till 10 o'clock at night. It's different this time of year, but this happens year round, and the guy does it with a headlight, so it's a little unnerving. I think currently that this draft is a little ambitious. I'd certainly like to see, rather than going to a first and second reading tonight, that possibly council consider getting more input from the public. I only found out about this bylaw being on, the draft being on the agenda on Friday, so it really hasn't given much time for this to really circulate. I have talked to a couple of my neighbors that live in close proximity, and certainly I think they feel the same way, that is 10 o'clock at night reasonable to be running power equipment, and I think most people in this room could agree that it isn't. There are examples in the package that other municipalities, certainly there's some issues with regards to fines and dealing with that. The district went to court about 3 years ago on a noise complaint from my neighbor, and it was, he represented himself, and the district had a lawyer, and actually he won. So it wasn't a good feeling for the neighbors after that. So certainly there's other examples. Maple Ridge has a good example of dealing with folks that misbehave, and maybe that's something that the district or the staff could look at. Certainly the times here that are used as examples in the community are more in keeping. I think, I don't see any here that are listed as examples at 10 o'clock at night. I just think that's totally unreasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Brent Donaldson from Chalicer Court.
Thanks.
Katie.
Katie Nelson, William Head, and this is regarding correspondence for action. Laura St. Jean, 14th Juan Fuca Scouting, request waive fees for use of municipal grounds. I really hope that you will waive the fees for these scouts because they are doing a lot of work for Metchosin, the work that they've done on the bike jump and stuff. Of course, it was something that they benefit from, but they also did a great weeding job in the back here, getting rid of stuff that would have been a fire hazard growing right up onto the building, and they've adopted a Gary Oak in the Old School Museum parking lot area there. They do a lot of good work here, and I think we shouldn't charge them for use of our grounds.
Thank you.
Hi, Ann Schubert, 3734 Duke Road. I was just building on the noise bylaw changes, and I just want to go on record that I really support either what View Royal have, which is 7 to 7, and excluding Sunday and holidays, so people get some peace and quiet and can have visitors over and barbecues without listening to, other construction noise, because, it's not just construction of buildings, it can be, clearing of land, it can be, sort of a phased construction, so it goes on forever and ever. And so I really support the View Royal category, but I also like the Langford one, so anyways, I just wanted to.
Thank you, Anne.
Hi there, Mike Ballard, Fulton Road. With the noise complaint, quite often when I get home at night, it's 7, 8 o'clock at night. That's the only chance I have to do any yard maintenance. I'm on a small 2-acre parcel with a lot of gardens, a lot of weed eating, a lot of lawn mowing. I do it all by myself. And if you're thinking about passing something for like 7 o'clock at night, that's, for a lot of us, that's not feasible. But I do understand that some people are probably being malicious to their neighbors, and there may be a clause put in there to for somebody who does something every night, 7 nights of the week, so that if there's a pattern developed, bylaw can enforce on it, rather than just blanking us all with the same rules and tying our hands behind our backs. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anybody else for public participation? If not, we'll move on to the adoption of the minutes. Thank you, everybody, for commenting tonight. So, turning to page 3 of the council agenda, we've got the council meeting minutes from May 15th. I just wanted to note that at item 10A, in item 10A, I wanted it noted that the motion was defeated. We all voted against us because in the meantime we had received information that the notices would be received too late. And so I thought that would add necessary context to that, because it does look a little bit odd that a motion was on the table and then we all voted it down. Okay, so with that addition, unless there's any others.
I'll move adoption.
Yep. Second. Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Shukin. Comments? All in? Yeah, go ahead.
I just had a couple of points to ask about. One was about the, just in regards to the 4696 Beckingham Road. I think it's noted here, but I wondered, I just wanted to emphasize, I had asked if staff could report to us about riparian areas, what activities are permitted after the registered professional comes. In other words, just getting a sense of that as we're making our decisions. If the riparian legislation is a bit confusing, so that information would be helpful to us just when we get back together. So more than just a discussion, I was hoping we might hear a little bit about that. Another thing was the kitchen renovation. That was on our agenda there, and I just wondered a little if we might get a little bit more information at some point about the purpose and extent of the renovation. I know that RFP is going out again, but that kind of came to us suddenly that time, so just a bit more information on it would be helpful. And the final point, I wondered if I might add something. We were asking staff to let us know about the BC Energy Step Code, and I've just learned in the last few days, because of involvement with the CRD with the climate people, that there's a new creature called the Zero Carbon Step Code. And I wondered if we might tag that on to that BC Energy Step Code information, because it sounds like the Zero Carbon Step Code is more effective and less costly and easier to implement. So just to add that thought for staff. Thank you.
Okay, so what we're doing is we're adopting the minutes as was taken.
Yes.
And so I think it would be better for that last item and any others to bring it to your Environment Committee next week.
Will do.
Would be better than amending the minutes since that wasn't discussed.
Oh, I wasn't thinking to amend them, just issues arising. Yeah.
Okay, so bring them to your Environment Committee, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Any others? If not, I'll take a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great, thank you. That's the receipt of all the minutes. The mayor's report. I just wanted to start off by saying we had discussed the grant and aid program earlier this evening, and I'd like these to be ratified at the council meeting. The following organizations have been giving grants. I'll just read them out. The Capital Bike, $500. The Intermunicipal Advisory Committee on Disability Issues, $250. Wanda Fuca Performing Arts Center Society, $300. Metchosin Museum Society, $800. Metchosin Preschool Society, $1,500. Prince Edward Pacific No. 9 Branch, the Royal Canadian Legion, $350. And Vancouver Island South Film and Media Commission, $1,300. With that, I'll take a motion to accept the recommendations from the Finance Committee for these agencies.
So
moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Gray. Any comments? No? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So on page 11 is my mayor's report. So those in the audience that haven't been here, what I do is have a written report for one of the council meetings and then a verbal update for the second. I was sort of hoping that after 6 months things would be slowing down a little bit, but it seems to be intensifying, so I've been very busy. We did have an island health update for local leaders on May 26. Leah Hollins from the board chair for Island Health, as well as Kathy McNeil and the executive leadership team was on the meeting. They wanted to talk about a number of different things, including the toxic drug supply. We've had 153, if you can believe it, lives lost to the toxic drug supply, and I think that's something that we're going to have to talk about in terms of initiatives, because as a council we are responsible for the well-being of all of our citizens, those that use and those that don't, so I think we'll need to talk about that. They want us to think about preparing for hot weather. Unfortunately, the fire chief has also thought about this in terms of what do you call them? Not wet stations, but sprinkler stations, cooling stations. Thank you. So all this initiative that the province was talking about was because during the heat dome events of June of 2021, there were 55 lives lost in BC. So there's some information there. I've given you the PDFs so you can look that up, and we can also discuss that in the future along with the fire chief. Of course, the World Health Organization announced that COVID-19 is no longer qualifies as a global emergency. I talked to Bonnie Henry that day, actually, at Government House regarding the announcement, and she said she was texting other health officers around the country about the announcement. So even though the WHO has declared that it's no longer a global health threat, it continues to be a threat, especially to the population who are immune compromised, as well as those people who chose not to get vaccinated. So please be vigilant as well. And then the third item was about the BC CDC survey, which is really interesting. They've asked us to speak, to respond to the third Speak Popular Health Survey, and the link is there provided in my mayor's report. The second thing is the mayor and chair's seasonal preparedness. On May 8th, I participated in a technical briefing regarding seasonal floods. So this is actually now out of date, even though it was only May 8th. The fire chief did note earlier this evening that we've had 48 coastal fires. So the province is asking people to conserve water, to be fire smarting their buildings, follow the guidelines and the advice of the fire chief. We possibly will have deployment this summer, we heard. Another interesting statistic is of the 146 fires that were reported in BC on May 8th, 92% of the fires were human caused. So please be careful out there. Let's see. And sign up for the POD program, please. I've got a Capital Regional District update here. And then the almost second last item is the Vision in Bloom event, which was a delightful event to attend at Royal Roads. Councillor Donaldson talked about it. It was really a fun day. We were invited by Dr. Philip Steenkamp, the President and Vice Chancellor. All the West Shore mayors and many council members were there to celebrate the Royal Roads University farm. So they're planning on putting in a medicine garden, planning to revamp their greenhouse, the farm there as well. What was the third thing?
Indigenous.
And an Indigenous garden. And what Dr. Steenkamp said is, our garden is your garden. So please, chosen residents, go out to Royal Roads University and see the magic that's happening over there. Other events that I've attended, Sarah Beckett Run, the ribbon cutting with the skate park, a tour of Satin Flower Nurseries. We've got the Metchosin site for Satin Flowers Nurseries, and it's certainly going to be a highlight, and is a highlight of Metchosin. I've attended an integrated police unit webinar update, a tour of the local school, Sunday markets and others. So it's been rather busy.
Mary,
okay, yeah, go ahead.
Can you comment on the presentation at the Vision in Bloom?
Oh, yeah, that was the major point. Thank you. Yeah, so the major impetus for the presentation was that the TD Canada Trust donated $196,000 to Royal Roads University for this initiative. And so $196,000 is no small chunk of change to be used for rejuvenation of their gardens. So we thank them all. Actually, I noted that in my report to thank Mr. Gray. Mr. Bruce Gray was his name. And TD Canada Trust has also committed to donate $1 billion with a B to community initiatives across Canada in the next decade. So they told us to look for the grant applications. So that's great. Thank you for the reminder. That was the point of the whole day. Thank you. Business arising on page 15 of the. I've done the recommendations from the grant and aid disbursement. And on page 15, we have the draft letter. So this draft letter was written the 22nd. Actually, it was written before they're revised on the 22nd. We only received the correspondence this morning. That is here on the pink. So that's why they don't exactly reflect each other, because we just received this today. But this is a draft letter that we did want to send. We've seen it once. Does anybody else have any comments regarding the new information that we received? And did you want to say anything different? Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I mean, this new information just makes me realize that we've got a lot to learn about what's going on here. And I guess, I started something off as kind of a different letter than where we started from, but putting that aside, I'm interested in learning a little bit more about this. And you've met with our MLA, which is great. There's 10 communities that have now been listed to be on the hook at the beginning here. And it's not clear, what will happen in those 10 communities, but I think by December, they'll have moved ahead with it. Now that we see our district is on the list, it makes me think if we're going to communicate, perhaps a different letter would be in order, because this one was more written about, don't come, or don't include us. Well, we're now included, so I think there's probably a different thing to be done, and I don't see a big rush, so I think we've got the time. If we can dig around and find out more, perhaps from the government or from the Minister's office about what the plans might be. I'm really feeling that the urban containment strategy or boundary is really important, and it seems like we're slipping away from it. That's a major decision, obviously for the CRD and for ourselves and for the province. So we could take another look at it and get a bit more information.
Okay. Councillor Shukin, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I support the letter, and I would support sending it. I do hear what Councillor Gray is saying, and I think that there are a few small edits that we could make to reflect the fact that some elements of the policy have come out. But I think it's actually because of that, some of the elements have come out. I think it's doubly important that we connect with the province, we share information with them about the limitations we have on growth, and signal that we're interested in discussing their program with them further. And again, I think it's important that we send a note that we recognize that there is a housing crisis, and that there are some elements that you want if you're looking to densify areas, and that includes the supporting infrastructure like water, sewage, transit, being close to job centers, being close to schools. So to my mind, it is really important that we get this letter out now, with an opening that we don't necessarily get positional, but we signal that there are some characteristics with Metchosin that do not support increased density.
Okay. Anybody else want to say anything? Go ahead, Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, I agree. I think also because we are getting this new information, I'm sure we're going to be getting more information to keep responding and keep that conversation going. I think this letter has definitely evolved. It's taken in some ideas that some of the residents have also shared at public participation. So I think it's ready to go. I only have one sort of just semantics, I guess, is are we underlining and bolding, or are we going to do one or the other? It's like it's really emphasized. I'm not sure if we're going to choose just sort of one theme of doing that. It's good whatever we do, but it just be more consistent.
Okay, yeah. Sure. Okay, and I also support sending this letter, and the reason is timing, because in the letter it does say that the 10 municipalities that have been identified, and Saanich, Victoria, Oak Bay are on that list. That is the first cohort, and then after 6 to 8 months they were going to start a new cohort. And so I would like to send this letter. If there's something specific you'd like added from this letter, it does say though that after the first cohort, I'll get the exact writing here, the housing supply regulation, but has not been selected as part of the district Metchosin has been identified as a specified municipality in the housing supply regulation, but has not been selected as part of the first cohort. However, it may be subject to a housing target assessment as part of the future cohort. So I think it is incumbent upon us to respond we can add a sentence regarding that. And I think we did talk about the urban containment boundary in here and in the part about the CRD. And so I would be in favor of sending this now, and that doesn't preclude us from having more discussions. We can send more letters, and I would like this letter copied to all the municipalities, especially some of the municipalities that are on the additional list of 47 municipalities, including Highlands as well, and of course to our MLA and our MP. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I'll just say this letter was drafted before we had this information. I'm just going to repeat that I think that it should be focused on the regional growth strategy and the urban containment boundary rather than sewer and water. I read from the letter from the minister saying that they're prepared to reward cash infrastructure. They'll build the sewers if we stand in their way. I think focusing on sewers and water is not, and that's what the letter seems to be about mostly to me, is not the right tack given the new information we've just received and put in our package. In fact, I think we received it so recently. So I would suggest holding back. I think that this is a very tender discussion for Metchosin itself. We've heard tonight from the public, but there's no rush for this. We're not in the first cohort, as you just said. I would give it some time here, figure out what's going on, and craft this letter. Perhaps talk to Highlands, talk to someone. I wouldn't be copying them. That's it. To me, it's kind of like perhaps it's too feisty for me. It's challenging the government, saying, "How dare you?" And I don't think that's really the tone we want to give these guys. I'd much rather we be in a position of saying we appreciate the needs here. Are we going to maintain? Thinking of the climate, thinking of other things that are going on here. I'm very much interested in the comments made from the public tonight about affordable housing. But building affordable housing means, and people will have perhaps read the Times columnist yesterday with a big report in there saying we're not going to get affordable housing through this plan. This is a commentator's, planner's views. What they're saying is we'll only get affordable housing with government funding for below market housing. And this proposal isn't that. And I think that they could respond to the letter and say, okay, we're not going to do 4 houses per lot. We'll have you guys do 2. And the idea that we can't have an agricultural land, well, a big chunk of Metchosin is not agricultural land that can easily take additional houses on it in the infrastructure question. So I make my argument, but I appreciate that others may not feel the same way.
What do you think? Want to comment?
Well, I actually agree with Councillor Gray that we should hold off and send it, reasonably soon, but just really take a look at this information that came today and get more information and try to be really get our point across in maybe a different way.
Okay. How about if we do this before did you want?
Yeah.
Okay.
So those are really good points. But I'd like to know what could we add to it. I don't think taking anything out. I think urban containment boundaries in there. Yes, I think it's important to mention what our land use is capable of here. This is why we have sewers, we don't have sewers, rather we have septic, and we have different zones where you can't even have that sort of stuff. It has to be the setbacks to where wells are and that sort of stuff. So it's descriptive of what we do have here, what we are faced, that to densify is quite a lot different. So I'm just curious as to what other things could we add to it to embellish it to be more convincing. And I'm sure it's not going to be the first letter we sent, and it's not much different than, and I don't see it as feisty. I do think it's pretty honest, similar to the anchorages and the old growth and other concerns our community has.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I continue. Again, no disrespect to Councillor Gray's observations, and he's made some interesting observations tonight about the housing strategy. Still, I do not believe that this is a confrontational letter. Agreeing with Councillor, it is truthful and sets out some of the core characteristics that make increased density in Metchosin incredibly challenging and just downright unproductive for the potential residents in terms of sewage and water. And again, I note, as I think I've noted before, that those of us who are in wells are beginning to notice a drop in the amount of water that we have available in the summer, and that's happening in really dramatic fashion. So the thought that somehow government might step in and push through sewer and water, I mean, that essentially would change the very nature of Metchosin, but I don't think we're going to provoke that with this letter. So,
Yeah, I don't think it's a feisty letter at all. I thought it was pretty well written. We could change the bolding and the underlining and include a paragraph up front that we've now received this letter, and we're grateful for the communications. Maybe we can add a sentence or two about the urban containment boundary, but I think it is worthwhile adding that we don't have sewer and we have a lack of water on a fragile aquifer. But I didn't see this as feisty for some reason.
Yeah, I guess I'm concerned. I know it was said at a previous council about the buffer land, but sewer and water is right there. That's a big chunk of territory. I think these letters are pretty clear. These are strong words that are being used, saying we intend to push it through. Oak Bay is saying they're really worried about it. They don't want to do it. Government saying you're going to be doing it. I think they turned to us. I don't know why we're on the list. So it's got me quite concerned, and I'm just a take care guy. We're in no rush here, and I think that getting a bit more detail about what's going on would be helpful. I've spoken enough about it, though, I realize.
Okay, so I'm going to call the question. I'd like to add more sentences regarding the urban containment boundary, because that's what I think that's a very good suggestion. I think we are in a rush. We've already delayed this for 6 to 8 weeks. We are in a rush because we are on the list, and so the next cohort is coming up in the fall, and we're now into June. July and August, people are taking vacations. We actually, this is very timely, and I'm not sure that we'll find out more information. This is scary, but they did say we may be subject to the housing target assessment. We don't know. So they've qualified that. They haven't said you will be, you're on the list, you may be. I would...
A little correction then. In the second last paragraph of the first page, I wish to note Metchosin has permitted attached secondary suites in all zones since incorporation, and detached secondary suites on lots, carries on. So just adding the word since incorporation. And I think we might have had mobile homes as well. I'm not factually clear about that, but we could add mobile homes if someone checks that.
I didn't know that was since 1984. Are you sure?
The secondary suite since incorporation. I say I don't know about the mobile homes.
I don't think so.
No, we checked that.
No, I think it's 2012. I went back and checked the minutes.
okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Anybody else? Okay.
Attached secondary suites.
Okay,
been
well, so
hearing things since
hold
I
on.
came-
We'll
since I-
we'll
1988.
verify that before we send the letter out. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So Mayor Little,
Yes.
I'd like to move that we send this letter as soon as possible, subject to additional content regarding the urban containment boundary. Where else we're going to add? Reflecting the recent policy announcement elements of the policy and the new letter that we've just received.
And copying the municipalities. No?
I'm with Councillor Gray on that one.
You don't think we should?
If we're going to send it, it's essentially public, so I'm fine to do that as well. Sure.
Okay.
Copying the municipalities, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Any other discussion? No? Okay. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Are you opposed to? Oh, I voted for. You voted for. Okay. Opposed. Councillor Gray's opposed. Thank you. Okay. Reports for action.
And we'll bold the text, not underline.
I didn't hear you, sorry.
Sorry, we will bold the text, not underline.
Oh, yes, we will bold, not underline. On page 17 of the agenda, we have reports for action. We have the staff report 2022, the District of Metchosin annual report. Now, before we begin, I want to say a huge thank you to Ms. Tina Hansen. She's worked incredibly hard to revamp the annual report. This is a far cry from past reports. It's very user-friendly. She's added a lot of photographs from the community. Our strategic plan is there, an update from the fire chief. And so I'd like to say a huge thank you. I know she told me it wasn't perfect and it'll be better in other years, so I look forward to that. So thank you very much, Ms. Hansen. So the recommendation is that Council direct staff to post the District of Metchosin 2022 annual report to the district's website for public inspection as per section 97 of the Community Charter, and to schedule consideration of public submissions regarding the District of Metchosin 2022 annual report at the regular meeting scheduled for June 19th in accordance with section 99 of the Community Charter, and to publish notice of the meeting as per section 94 and 97 of the Community Charter. So there's a number of things that the annual report must have. You can see that on page 17 and 18, the 6 items. These items have been included. This is in accordance with section 99 of the Community Charter. And I was wondering if anybody wanted to comment or add anything. If you got typos or anything, if you could just send them to Tina, that would be great. But other substantive comments? Yeah, Councillor
I think it was an excellent report, and yes, it was great. Had a couple of things, so I can send them to her.
Typos or something
well, there was
substantive?
one on page 50. It refers to the new brewery as a microbrewery, and it's actually a nano brewery.
Okay.
So, a little smaller.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else wish to comment? Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, I want to commend Ms. Hansen on this. This is not only is it attractive, but it's definitely it's well laid out. It's got a whole lot of information. It's worth the public reading this. After years of attending meetings, not just council meetings, but budget meetings, there's a lot of time and energy that council and staff put into these sorts of things, and there's a lot of information that when you come to the podium and ask us or share concerns with us, you'll get a lot of information out of this beforehand. So it's really, I still read last year's just so I know where I'm going for this year. It's a great document to learn a lot from and know what's going on in your community and things that that we all can share to evolve in being a better community. But this is well represented. I love the layout. It's very attractive and it's an easy to read document.
Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Shukin.
Thanks, Mayor Little. And I just, again, bravo to Ms. Hansen for the work here. And as it happens, I was going through some of the other municipalities in the CRD and looking at their documentation. And I have to say there was a little voice that in my mind that kept saying, why can't we have an annual report that looks like this? And lo and behold, we have one now. So, and I trust that it will improve next year even. So, excellent. Yeah, thanks very much, Tina.
Okay. Anybody else? I just wanted to say Ms. Tarnowski, did you want to say anything about this? And Ms. Hansen, did you have any other additional comments?
I just wanted to congratulate Ms. Hansen as well for incredibly fabulous job that she's done with the revamping the annual report, and it's visually very, very pleasing, and more importantly, the content is very, very relevant and useful. Also, congratulations again, Ms. Hansen.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hansen, did you want to comment besides the report summary that you have here on your report?
I don't have anything else to add other than the notice will be published in this Wednesday's Gazette, and the annual report will go on the website tomorrow.
Okay, great. So it will be on the website, and we're looking for public comment. Okay, great. The recommendations are here. I read them out. Would somebody like to move the recommendations?
I'll move.
Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Epp. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. Thank you very much. Okay. Correspondence for action. The first item is Laura St. Jean, group commission from the 14th Fuca Scouting. They've got a request to waive the fees for use of the municipal grounds. And this is on page 105 of your council agenda. This is for June 17th from 5 to 7. They're requiring the field and the stage for their end of the year barbecue and AGM, 40 to 80 people. And I concur with Katie Nelson saying that I think that we should grant them their wish. They're great community supporters and volunteers. Anybody else wish to comment?
I'll just make a motion that we waive the fees for this event.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Comment? Questions, concern? If not, I'll call the question. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
just want to elaborate on this. It's great to see young people out there engaging in their community and actually having fun. And one particular night, while we were sitting here, nice and warm, pouring rain out, and they were taking photos, and they were out there just having a good time doing it. Well, I'm assuming they're having a good time. I don't know. But they were doing great stuff, so this is the nice reward. But I just want to elaborate a little bit on their AGM. It is a time that they bring all their families out, which is why they're up to 80, and they try to recruit the parents to get more involved and take on a leadership role, or take on a bottle drive, or dig out the brambles roots so they don't keep growing back. But it's a recruitment thing too, so it's an appreciation, and their AGM. Yeah, it's a complete circle, so it's a good event for them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Anybody else? Seeing none, I'll call the question to waive the fees. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. None. Thank you. Okay, the second item is a proclamation. So we haven't had one of these this term, but many communities, like the City of Victoria, receives a ton of them, and they actually devote a meeting to them because it takes so long. The only caveat, and this is a letter from the ALS, the Amyotrophic Lateral Sclerosis Society, and I do support the research into ALS, and I'm very grateful that there is a provincial society. The only caveat is that if we do proclamations, we have to consider all the proclamations. Not saying that we have to grant them all, but we have to at least hear them, and it would increase staff time. Because a proclamation would have to be made and put on the website. So it's really up to council. I'm fine either way. It's just that we will get them from time to time. This was asking to declare June ALS month. Okay. So what do you think? What would you like to do? It's up to council. Go ahead.
Just a point of information to say that June is declared in Canada as ALS Awareness Month already.
Mm-hmm. They would like us to proclaim it.
Quite. I just want people to know it is in fact declared as Canada-wide ALS Awareness Month. So I gather we have a policy of not doing declarations in the past. So it's okay with me given the amount of time and energy that goes into it. We could put a link to the minister's announcement in Ottawa on our website if that made sense.
Yeah, okay. We don't have a policy, we just have a past practice. But if you would like to consider this, we can. I hear from Councillor Gray that he doesn't really want to, but that would be an easy ask to put this on the website that ALS, the June is the ALS Awareness Month.
Thanks, Mayor Little. I'm happy to stick with past practice as well.
Okay.
So.
I agree with that too.
Okay, sure. Okay, so we will not do a proclamation on this, and any other proclamation we won't consider. Is that what we're saying? Go ahead.
So could we do as Councillor Grace suggested, and we have newsy bits that we put on our website, put a link there saying this is happening this month where it times itself out at some point, right?
Sure.
Just like the backpack project, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
As a notice.
Yeah. Okay, so that's an action item to do. Okay, thank you. Let's move on. This is the correspondent for information. We have the CRD annual report on page 109 of the council agenda. It was timely that we received this because we had also received a presentation from Ted Robbins, Mr. Ted Robbins, the CEO of the CRD, and his executive staff. Did anybody want to comment? It's actually a heavy read. There's a lot of information here, and I encourage residents to go through it because we do quite a bit of your tax dollars goes towards the CRD where they provide the services for the region. So anybody else have any comments regarding it? If not, I'll receive a motion to receive the report.
Motion to receive.
Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Gray. Comments? No. Call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. The second thing is the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice. This was a letter. We've gone back and forth. Advocacy letters. This is on page 137. This is a letter that I wrote as chair of the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice. We thank them for the funding for the Greater Victoria Mobile Youth Services Team, for the interim funding, asking for more sustained funding. So this is a letter for your information. So I'll take a motion to receive.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Shugan, second by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, we've got some bylaws to consider here. First of all, on page 139, we have the staff report, the District Metchosin Council Code of Conduct. We've already seen this twice before. We're going to go through it again. I just wanted to note that there was, I was going through the document that I sent you later on today, the document that we received from the lawyer, and then this is the document that was amended by our staff. Unfortunately, there was a number of errors regarding, for instance, the first one was number 27, the corporate officer shall keep record and advice. Under the section 28, it was actually under the 26. So when the pagination happened, some of the inside information wasn't updated. So I think that's important for us to get all that right before. There was quite a few of those to get those right before we actually sign off on them. And then on page 169, there was Ms. Tarowski, do you have the code of conduct with you?
I don't have it handy with me.
Okay.
Sorry, no, I'm actually looking at.
Okay.
No, it's part of the agenda package, so I do have
Okay, that's fine. I'll ask you those questions when I see you. We can include them on the next revision. So, does anybody have any comments? We had gone up to interactions of the council members, I believe, or did we get to the improper use of influence? Who would like to start off discussing the carrying on with reading this?
Mary Livens? Sorry, just for clarification, is the draft in front of us has it been revised at all based on previous comments?
No.
Good.
No, it hasn't. There's no track changes in here which would indicate any changes that we've made. This is the draft bylaw that was amended by staff that we received from our legal counsel.
Okay, thank you. Great.
Okay. So, Ms. Hanson, if I can just get some direction from you, what would you like to see us? So there's still a number of things that need to be addressed. here. Would you like us to do first and second reading? Make some suggestions? What would you like to have us do?
So, to date, council's given first reading, and I've had clarification that that's fine. You can carry on going through the bylaw, or you can give second reading. If you just cannot, you have to amend the bylaw prior to third. So I would suggest going through the bylaw, making all your proposed changes, and staff come back with a track change document, and then that council would amend the bylaw and then give third reading as amended.
Okay, so we've already given first reading, right? And so that's enough for us to do corrections. Okay, that's great. Okay. Does anybody want to start? We had the comments that we had previously. Have they been tracked, or?
No, but I've made notes, and so I know the intent of what council would like to see changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then why don't we start? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I don't know if I could throw a curve at this process here.
Yeah.
It's 10 to 10, and we have two other significant bylaws before us. And I believe the code of conduct is significant enough that I wonder if we could do a workshop to go through the whole thing, or a large portion of the whole thing.
Okay, have a special meeting?
Yeah, yeah. And again, know that we're going to set a date if we can, and then know that we're going to work through it at that date.
Okay.
Again, we get this just a few days ago, and need to make comment on it. I know that we've seen it before, but again, just to have it living in life before us in an editing session, that strikes me as a good way of approaching this.
Okay, so that is a proposal that we could have another open meeting, open to the public, workshop style, so we only deal with this document. Then we can do the changes. Then it would come back to council with the track changes, and then we do the third reading.
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I had suggested, actually, at the last meeting, we should do it, and I guess it was misinterpreted because, we shouldn't do it in camera. My point was that we do it in an open meeting so the public is there, sees us go through this, because it will be time consuming. It's not about, semicolons and spelling errors or anything. There's a lot of really important information that needs to be thought through, and in some cases reworded. So I think that doing an isolated and concentrated effort on it in a workshop style.
Okay. Any other comments? You're amenable to that?
No.
Yeah. Are you amenable to that, Councillor? Yeah. Okay. So why don't we do that then? We'll bring this back. We'll have a special meeting. It'll have to be advertised. We'll have a special meeting to only go through this document. And then, like what I said, we'll go through it, make all the changes, then we'll bring the track changes back to another council meeting to be ratified in the third, or to be read at third reading. Okay, so I would feel more comfortable if we had a motion to that effect. Councillor Shukin?
Sure, I would move that that a special council meeting be set for the sole purpose of working through the code of conduct, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. So moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Discussion. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That's unanimous. Okay, thank you. So we've got two more bylaws. Bylaw 683, the District of Metchosin Good Neighbors Bylaw. Susan, or Ms. Tarnowski, could you give some information regarding your report and discuss some of the nuances of this new, because this is something that is new to the District of Metchosin, this Good Neighbor Bylaw.
Oh, absolutely, Mayor Little. So this bylaw is more to consolidate, not consolidation in the sense that we're consolidating consolidating the existing bylaw, but bringing together all the various bylaws that we have that relate to conducting ourselves in acceptable behavior within the district. So we have within this new bylaw, unsightly premise, noise. Those are the two big areas that we're bringing together into one bylaw. So, what else was I going to say about that? We also added a bit more definition to what we're finding our existing bylaw in terms of unsightly at times some of the areas have been a little difficult to enforce because there's not clear definition. So we've added that into the definition of what constitutes unsightly, and we've also added sections to include odor, vibrations, and illumination, things like that. That is included in section 14.
Mm-hmm. And then also you had included information on what other districts and municipalities do in terms of their exemptions and their times.
Yeah. So that is an area that Ms. Hanson and I were debating back and forth in terms of the time. So that's the best approach is to have a comparative table for council to have a discussion on as a timing for operating of noisy equipment, if you will, just as we've heard a few of our community members have brought up earlier.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and this was drafted by our legal counsel as well. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah, and that hasn't been modified by us in any way, or just with
just the times.
Just the fines. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Times.
Oh, times. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. The other question that I had was, so this bylaw is intended to, this bylaw is intended to mitigate what has been happening in the community. So we've received so many complaints regarding noise and unsightly premises. The question that I ask council is, does this bylaw address those complaints? Does this give us more, does this give more tools in our toolkit? Does this help, will this help solve some of the conflicts regarding that? So, and I think the times is excessive. I think running a machine until 10 at night is not reasonable, especially when there's young kids sleeping next door. So I think we have to balance the rights of both the property owners and the neighbors as well. And this does a good job of that, but I would like to see a decrease in the times. Okay, so let's go ahead. Who wants to speak first? Councilor Donaldson. Yeah.
So, as I've had some experience with the noise bylaw and a number of people.
The time is such that Tina signal.
Okay, so to go past 10 o'clock, thank you, Tina, or Ms. Hanson. So to go past 10 o'clock, we need a motion to extend the meeting. I'd like a motion moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. I think we're all opposed to it, but we're going to do it anyways. Okay. Thank you. Who wants to
Yes,
keep
so
going?
you're quite right. There's been a lot of feedback from residents on noise, odors. That was actually seemed like a common theme when I was door knocking in my campaign, mostly because it was to do with cannabis, because that's new in the last half a dozen years as far as odors go. And yeah, so there's and light is another one that every once in a while keeps coming up with it. It's not greenhouses so much, but outdoor lights. In my neighborhood, there's a neighbor that will suspend a big lamp just so that there's light on their property, and if it's not on a lamp, if it's not suspended, it's on a stand. So the way this is written is whether or not the illumination comes from a structure. So that's a detail that I hadn't thought about until I read it, and heard about this in the neighborhood, that this was happening. So that would be one for the elimination. As far as the noise bylaw, certainly the time is not really any different if we're going to only reduce it by 1 hour to 9 o'clock. Doesn't matter what time of year it is, noise is noise. So if it were me, my first choice would actually be the Langford example. I don't know how many people in Langford actually follow that, but that would be my first choice. I do have like a first, second, and third, but that one resonates better from just, again, listening to what other neighbors, not just my neighborhood, but other neighbors in this community have experienced, and some people have actually moved away because the noise and the retaliation that comes from, putting your name forward and that sort of stuff. So it's a quiet community because noise travels. So it's just a matter of finding something that works, whether it's 8 to 8 or 7 to 7, and which days, holidays, Sundays. Okay. So people don't work 7 days a week, so there will be times off to do yard work.
So you're a proponent of the 7 to 7, Monday to Friday, 8 to 5 Saturdays, prohibited Sundays and holidays unless authorized by a permit?
Yes.
Okay. Who else? Were you finished? Juan?
For now I am, yes.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Shukin.
Thanks, Myrtle. A few comments. First of all, I think it's a very good move, and thanks to Ms. Tarnowski for bringing this all together. Noise, odor, unsightly premises. I think it's a good move to bunch all these together. I have a few comments though. One on definition. If you go to public view, which relates to unsightly premises, it's actually fairly limited. Visible by a person from a highway or an occupant of adjacent property. So it does not allow for an unsightly premise that might be visible from a trail or a viewpoint, for example. And I think that's significant to keep in mind.
Okay.
So again, the modification could be or a publicly accessible viewpoint. And in terms of noise...
Just say that again. Or from a publicly accessible viewpoint?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, subject to review by legal counsel. And I have, in terms of the times, the exemption times, I personally feel like 7 is maybe a little early. 10 is definitely too late. And you phrased it very well. There is a balance of rights that need to be respected here. But I say as the evening goes on, the rights should fall to those who want peace and quiet in their property. So finding that right time is going to be a challenging thing. But I mean, I feel we've got 7, 8, 9, not 10. So one of those. But
okay.
On a larger basis, though, the one thing that I wanted to mention is that there was a speaker earlier who mentioned Maple Ridge and the bylaw they have there. And it is a specific bylaw called the Nuisance Prohibition Bylaw. And what it does is there's a provision there that if directed at repeat offenders. And so if you have somebody you have to go back to bylaw or the arson you have to go back to on a regular basis, after the 3rd time, you begin to pay an administration fee for those visits if they're proven to be justified and founded. And the cost for this, it's a fee of $1,000. There's a visitation fee and then there's an administration fee or something like that. What's interesting about the fee is it can be applied to your taxes. And, with respect to fines, we can fine people, but it may cost us thousands of dollars in terms of trying to get that fine. And it may be a small fine of $200. And if someone doesn't want to pay, there's no provision to actually put it on their taxes. If you look at the Maple Ridge bylaw, there's ample protection for, again, frivolous and vexatious complaints, or making sure the complaints are verified, and then also working, of course, with the subject of complaint to achieve compliance or whatever. So I like the general layout of the Good Neighbor bylaw, but I think there's room to introduce something like the nuisance prohibition bylaw or build that ability to charge a fee for repeat visits. And I think it would be interesting to have our lawyers assess how we could maybe do that, again, subject to council's view on this as well.
And were you suggesting that we add this in between the noise and the temporary noise permit section?
Yeah, and
or
when I originally looked at it, I thought it was part of their general nuisance bylaw, but it is a bylaw unto itself. Again, It's called a nuisance prohibition bylaw, and it allows, again, for the paying of fees for repeat visits.
Okay.
And those are significant. The way they have it here, it's significant repeat visits, not just, again, just significant.
So that would be an additional bylaw. Would anything within this bylaw, you probably haven't studied it, but anything in this bylaw contravenes that bylaw so that they negate each other?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
And there may be an opportunity to build this mechanism, the fee mechanism, into the current bylaw, and I think that would be interesting to look at. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Well, let's do that.
Yeah.
What does everybody think?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to seek legal advice as to where, if it goes in here separate or not. I think it sounds like a neat idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
To get some advice on whether it works in Maple Ridge, I guess, also from the lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I do too. I think it sounds like a good idea. And as far as the time goes, I think 7. I like 7, but it is a bit early. I think 8 o'clock would be at least a better place to start.
8 p.m. at night. Okay. Anybody else wish to speak before other people speak a second time? No. Yeah? No?
Sure. Is there a motion for first reading, second reading?
Yeah, I
When
think
do
we haven't done, this is the first time we've seen this. We could do a motion we haven't done it, but we could do a motion for first reading. We're discussing it now. Did you want to put forward the motion?
I can make some comments too, if you like. I just wasn't sure where we were at.
Yeah.
I guess I was interested to learn, and perhaps Mr. Tarnowski's heard from our lawyers, but how well does it work in terms of, we're amping it up here quite a bit, and we're very specific on a whole pile of different problems. They all read sensible to me, but how does it work in places that have similar bylaws? I gather this is taken from another community or been written up, and is it working well in terms of neighbor-to-neighbor conflict? I guess that's really my question. It is quite detailed, and it's bringing together those 3 different characters, so that's just a question I had, and if we don't have an answer, maybe we could ask the legal people who drafted it.
How about if we ask her?
Sure.
Ms. Tarnowski, do you have any information regarding this?
I do have a response to that question, Councillor Gray. So this version of the bylaw is a revision and improvement of all previous versions of bylaws that have been written for other municipalities. So at this point in time, it does work well. Like I mentioned earlier, it's an improvement of the other versions of bylaws didn't quite work so well. So at this point in time, they do work really well. But the version that you have in front of yourself today.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Then I guess I had a question about, I understand the way it's written. You're able to do work or do construction, you just can't be noisy about it. That's really the catch. So people can do interior work later if they're not noisy to their neighbors. But that's how I'm reading it. And when I think about it, 7 o'clock seems too early to me. We heard tonight, Mike spoke up earlier about coming home from work and wanting to do some things, and I take that as an important issue for lots of people. So I would be okay for advancing it. And then before hearing from people, I was thinking, well, 9 o'clock cuts it down from 10, see how that works, we can change it again. But I wondered more, people have got feedback. I don't know what people have said. So what have people said in the community in terms of getting the feedback? What hour were they saying?
Go ahead, Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, that's as probably all know, it's been a hot topic in my household for some time, but in speaking to residents, 8 to 8 was another one that was like, oh, that's better because then, you know, there's not so much early noise, right? People that want to sleep in or whatever, or a lot of retired people, or people who work from home. It's just a quieter time of day earlier in the morning, or you want to mow your lawn at 8 at night. But come October, we're not mowing lawns, we're blowing leaves in the dark at 8 o'clock in some cases. When I looked at this, I thought myself, 8 to 8 would be better than 10 when people are probably going to bed. However, knowing that our current noise bylaw does not stand up in court, that the legal advice we got for this probably is that 7 to 7 is more commonplace, and so if we're going to base lawsuits, etc., on case studies, these times, which are fairly similar in some cases, 7 to 7, and you know, I've looked at the North Cowichan, North Saanich, areas that are rural, and they're a little bit different again. And I know that Langford's not rural, but the fact that it actually got on this list, it gets me thinking that probably legal counsel looked at it as it's more enforceable, because when our noise bylaw went to court, that was the first thing that the judge said is non-enforceable bylaw. So there's a lot more to work with here, and it's more commonplace, I think, when we're looking at some of these. But 9 o'clock is still late. Doesn't matter what time of year. And if you put dusk, then that's subjective. Everybody has a different idea.
And let's not forget that most people are good neighbors, and that they probably don't do work consistently every night. These kind of bylaws are people to use as a guideline. And if somebody was working till 9 o'clock one night, I'm sure that they could talk to their neighbors, and we encourage that and say, I'm noisy tonight, but I'm not going to be noisy for the next 32 days. So, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe it would be helpful to read that decision too. If we're going to get this other work done by Maple Ridge, let's get a look and see what the failing was there. I think that would be good to see.
Oh, that's a good point. So say it again. So let's look to that court case, see what specifically the judge said, and address those specifically in here. Good points, both of you. Anything else? I just wanted to know in the cannabis section, or sorry, did I read into that? That's the odor and other disturbances, item number 14. Isn't this sort of subjective? And how is that going to be odors? How is that going to be quantified and enforced? I question that. Not that we shouldn't have it in there. It seems a bit subjective. But it may help if we have an egregious property owner that does have illegal grow-ops that we can't get a handle on. This is possibly a tool. Go ahead.
Well, it's not just cannabis. I mean, there are neighbors who are people who will burn construction waste or burn garbage, just garbage, not paper or wood, but all sorts of stuff. So those are obnoxious odors, right? I mean, it's bad enough it's not good for the climate, but so it's not just that. Or some people run their diesel truck to warm it up in the winter, and so that can be considered a noxious fume too. So you know, so there's not a lot here, but at least it's something. It's a start.
Okay. Did everybody understand the differentiation between the industrial and commercial? I wasn't exactly sure. For instance, on page 177, section 7, section 6 does not apply to industrial or commercial activities between 7 and 6. Maybe I can get some information from the interim CAO when she gets back. We can talk about that. Go ahead.
I was okay with that because if you go to the definitions, the two industrial areas are cited. Like this is where industrial activity would take place. So to my reading, it's really specific to
those particular industrial sites that have been identified in the OCP.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the way I read it. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments while we're going through? Everybody's getting tired, so how about if we go ahead and do a first reading? We'll get some more information. Pardon?
Would you like me to move first
Sure.
reading? I'll move first reading of Good
Bylaw
Neighbor Bylaw
686.
686.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Epp. For first reading, so where I'm reading that is on page 173, the options for council. Okay, so this is the first reading of Bylaw 686. Moved and seconded.
Is it first and, it says first and second here, so we're just doing first.
We can just do first.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Mayor Little, can I ask Ms. Hanson for clarity on that? Because I seem to recall in the council procedure bylaw that before you amend a bylaw, you must go through first and second reading. And through you, Mayor Little, is that true? Right?
That's correct. You must give first, and well, you need to amend the bylaw between second and third reading.
Okay.
So you can give tonight. You can give either first or first and second. Refer it back to staff to seek legal, just to work with legal counsel on the proposed changes, and then you have to amend the bylaw, and then give third reading as amended.
Okay,
so you could give first and second tonight, because it does say, yeah.
Okay.
It's just the code of conduct was only given first reading.
Okay.
Initially.
So can you make an amendment and then we will?
I'm just thinking, I think they have to be done separately, but I was just thinking if we give first reading, like get that information back, then we can pass second reading and move forward. I'd like just to get more, get the gel in there so we know what we're up to.
Okay.
Before jumping to second, but
okay,
that's one idea.
So this is moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Council F. First reading, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. So what are we going to do? Now, leave it at that, and then we'll get more information from staff. We can do second and third later on.
Do we need a motion? Are we clear what we're asking staff to get more information on? Again, through you, Mayor Little.
Yeah. So let's articulate that. So the information from staff. Would you like to go ahead?
I was just thinking the first one was that Councillor Shukin mentioned Maple Ridge's fee structure.
The bylaw, sorry, the nuisance bylaw, nuisance prohibition bylaw, and fee structure within that. Yeah, so.
Okay. So more information on that, how it works, whether we should incorporate it into this bylaw or have a separate bylaw by itself. We wanted more information on the, if it was okay if we add the public view, whether from a trail or a publicly accessible viewpoint. Wanted clarification on how enforceable the odors and other disturbances are going to be. I guess it doesn't hurt to have it in there, but it might have it in there if you can't quantify it and enforce it. What else?
Councillor Donaldson had mentioned illumination by light not attached to a building. I don't know if that's going to be an amendment maybe. Do we need information on that?
Yeah, no, I don't
Either attached to a building or independent structure.
Yeah.
Okay, more
It's
information
right now
on.
it's written as construction or coming from the building.
Okay, so an independent structure as well. We can add that for information. And more information on specifically where has it worked. And it would be really nice to know if they have gone to court, whether they've been able to use this as a tool to effectively, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, if you're
No.
just back to odor for a moment. I believe that there was an earlier discussion, like months ago, about how there is technology that can measure odor. And so the question might be to understand how it's measured, if it can be measured within that question. So.
Okay, great. This also affords the community some time to weigh in as well. They only did just receive this on Friday as well, as we did. So this allows the community to have more input into this. Go ahead.
A copy of the decision that the district lost in court.
That's right, a copy of the decision, well, we can get that's publicly available, so a copy of the decision and specific points for us to address that the judge has noted. Yeah. Okay. I see Ms. Hanson writing all that down, so I don't think we need a motion for that. Or do you want a motion? No? Okay, great. Okay, let's move on to the second. This is the Soil Removal and Deposit Amendment Bylaw 687. So this is an amendment to our existing soil removal and deposit bylaw. And it's on page 191 of the council. And so this was specifically addressed by our legal counsel to say that we need to have these sections. Ms. Tarnowski, did you want to speak to this?
Again, so the intention of this amendment, this bylaw, is really to add clarity. So what staff have been finding, trying to enforce our existing bylaw, is there's lack of definition particular to other materials. So it has been left open to individual interpretation what other materials constitute. So the amendment to this is just to give clarity and definition to other materials in particular, and also things like definition on wood, waste, and also just reference about riparian areas regulations.
Okay. Okay, let's open this up. Thank you for that. Let's open this up to the committee.
So, Mayor Little, thanks very much. And wonderful to see the revisions come to the bylaw, and I think there's two fairly simple ones that we can make. But I have a question, though, about the definition of other material, not so much the definition itself, but how it's going to be useful within like the machinery of the bylaw itself. Like it's okay to define it, but I don't see anywhere where it says and other material, the deposit of other material is prohibited. So it's just there as a definition, and I don't see where it comes into play. So that I think is something to look at.
Okay. So Ms. Tarnowski, can you address that specific question?
So this is just to amend the bylaw. This is not the only section of the bylaw. So going forward, once it's adopted, there will be more substance to this bylaw for this amendment, which is 467. It's not just going to be a two-pager. There'll be all the other substance that currently exists under bylaw 402. So these are just to add to the definition section. Does that make sense, Councillor Shugan?
Not totally, but I'm curious to, Councillor Gray has an observation. I'm curious to know what his thoughts are.
Yeah, I had the same concern when I looked, well, where the heck is it mentioned? So I believe where you see it is in item 10 on page 199. So it says soil or compost material may be deposited without a permit. Then it goes down if it meets one of the following conditions, and then it says the deposit. So that's a defined term by the nature of the piece of the document. So the defined term includes other material at that point. So every time you see the words the deposit, it means that full meaning, even if wherever it's sitting in the document.
Okay.
And so when I read it that way, I said, okay, there it is. That deposit includes other materials now. So it doesn't separate them, it brings them together. That's how I read it. But I think it's a fair question to have the lawyer just sort of point that out. I mean, this is just my lay person's reading.
So sorry, once again, section 10, can you?
Section 10.1
okay.
Says the deposit is necessary for and is within. So there, that deposit, that every time we see the word the deposit, it's a defined term. So it means everything. Includes the act of moving, this and that and the other thing. Other material, excuse me, that doesn't turn up anywhere. Is that the issue?
Yeah, that's my, yeah.
It turns up in the definition deposit.
Yeah.
So I think that's the link. But I'm just offering that as a layperson's view of it.
No, yeah, of course, like the concern we have is that other materials are really things that we do not want deposited on a large scale.
Yeah.
Asphalt, biological waste, construction, demolition waste, fertilizer, etc. So,
And then it comes up again then at the very bottom one, subsection 3 of section 8, prohibitions, replaced with deposit any soil, compost, or other material. So let's just find that. Anyway, I'm just offering layperson, so I think getting it just pointed out to us directly would be useful if Ms. Terneski can dig in with the lawyers.
yeah, so I guess my question is, how is it mobilized in the act, or how is it part of, not the act, the bylaw, how is it part of, or put in aid of ensuring that we don't have asphalt done, or that there's the ability to go after somebody? Because I think one of the issues was, if they're dumping asphalt or drywall, we don't really have a mechanism to go after.
Here it is now. Prohibitions, section 8. Okay. No person shall do any of the following. And number 3, deposit any soil or compost material. Section 8, prohibitions. So no person shall do any of the following, and then it's section 3 has been revised. So now it reads deposit any soil or compost material or other material.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's prohibited.
There it is.
Prohibited.
Okay. So sorry. Again.
I'm sorry for jumping around like that.
No.
I think we found it.
But I actually scribbled or other material in section 8. Is it going to be? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm. Back to other material again. I just wondered, like there's a list, but there are materials that aren't in there, such as, there's rebar, but there's not metal, or things like car parts. There's no plastic. And I'm just wondering about, it's almost impossible to sort of list all these items, but I just wonder if there's any way that we can put some generic thing in there that would, cover just about anything that's not compostable or something like that.
Good question.
Yeah, like a term like non-organic or non, I'm not sure the term.
Yeah.
I know what you're getting at. We're going on 5.5 hours here. My brain's starting to shut down.
It's man-made or recycled materials.
Say that again?
Man-made or recycled man-made materials.
Man-made or recycled.
Thank you.
Materials. Okay. Man-made or recycled materials. Okay, let's consider that. Adding something like that. Maybe with more sleep we'll be able to think of something. Thank you. Something else for the following definitions. Plastics. That's a good one. I hadn't thought of that because that's
a lot of plastics.
There's a lot of plastics.
Manufactured is the other word. Yeah. Manufactured materials.
Okay. Okay. So where were we? Did we do first reading? We've got the first reading, a first and second. No, a first and a seconder. Now we've had a discussion. We can call the, do you want to say something else before I call the question? Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to clarify, like when I look at the list of materials, I think we just want to be careful that it's okay for people to have a pile of wood or a pile of chips or the work that they're going to do in their either garden or their place, that we're not saying people can't have these things around their dwellings. Now, I think that's caught by the volume, shall not exceed 80 cubic meters. So I think it's in the volume, but I just want to be clear that people can have a 2 or 5 cords of wood or whatever they have, to work on, or slabs that they may have collected that are going to turn into firewood. There's those practical questions of living where we do, that people do have. I think our department, Public Works, drop chips off at people's homes sometimes. So if it's just to get clear that the volume is what limits it, or is there something else in here that we didn't see?
Yeah, and I can't imagine that people would complain about people having cords of wood in their yard.
No,
right?
No, but just to be sure we're not catching that in the language. language here.
And Mayor Little, I thought the same thing as Councillor Gray, and when I went through the definition, I think it's okay, because again, sawdust isn't like firewood, or hot fuel isn't firewood, bark isn't firewood, bark mulch, like these are really specific kind of non-firewoody things.
Yeah.
So I felt it was okay. But again, it's...
Okay. Any other comments? I'm keen to get the input from the public on this one, because a number of people have had complaints. So.
Do first reading.
Yes, so we were doing first readings. We've got a first and a second. I'm going to call the question if that's okay with everybody.
Can I?
Sorry, we don't have a first and second.
I didn't hear her.
We haven't done a first and second reading yet.
First
reading. Sorry.
We were just doing the first. So that was moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Ebb. Right?
Okay.
Yep. Was it?
Yes.
Okay. First and second, and for the reading, the first reading, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, that was unanimous. Okay, so please, the public is invited to weigh in on this. We'd like their comments.
Brenda?
Yes.
I wonder if there is an advantage of moving or going to second reading with this.
What's the advantage?
Well, it moves this along and it allows us to amend it based on public input, because I think we could probably go to second reading and then amend it as well, but
I'm okay with that.
Sorry, I wonder if I could ask Ms. Hanson a question through you. Ms. Hanson, is there any advantage to doing second reading now based on, like...
If there is not going to be too many amendments where we can just bring it back for council consideration, then yes, we can do
Second reading? Okay. Yeah.
As opposed to the code of conduct where there's more. So that if we do not anticipate there's going to be a lot of revisions, we can go ahead and do the second. They've got to be, all the revisions have to be made between the second and the third reading.
Yeah.
So I sense an appetite too, so let's go ahead and do it.
Okay. I would move second reading of bylaw to amend soil removal and deposit bylaw number 402. So
Bylaw number 402. Okay.
Yeah, second reading, yes.
Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Comments, questions? Not. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, let's leave it at that and move on to the, where are we? Soil. Okay, so this is just the last.
I cited the wrong bylaw. The amendment is actually bylaw 687. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. 687. Okay.
Me too.
Okay, and then moving along just to the last point, I had added, I'd like a brief discussion about flags. What I understand, I'm specifically talking about the pride flag. I'd like to be able to raise the pride flag in Metchosin during the weeks of June 29th to July 9th. That's Victoria Pride Week. Specifically about the pride flag, it really does demonstrate openness and diversity, and it shows that we're welcoming, we hope, to everyone regardless of who they are, where they come from, their color of their skin, or their race, religion, their creed, and including who they love. And so I think it's important this is a symbol, and I understand it is a symbol. What I'm worried about is the youth in our community that they would be better off dead rather than talking about their identity, their gender identity. And we see, particularly in the United States and across the world, there's been a lot of pushback on supporting gay rights. And I think this would be something that we could do. It doesn't cost us a lot of money, and I think it would mean something to somebody, especially youth. So I'm a little bit passionate about that, but I would like to have your support on that. And also regarding flags, since we're talking about them, the Canadian flag is not required to be flown in the municipal chambers. In Canada, the requirements regarding the display of the Canadian flag vary between the different jurisdictions and in their chambers. But it is raised in chambers to speak to a symbol of national unity and pride. It's common practice for municipal buildings, including the chambers, to display the national flag alongside the provincial flag and sometimes the municipal flag. While there's no legal requirement for the municipal chambers in BC or elsewhere in Canada to fly the Canadian flag, it's often seen as customary practice. Soon we will be asked to raise the portrait of our new king up there where the Queen held a place of honor. And so I think if we're going to be having a portrait of the king, it would be great if we could have the Canadian flag behind here. There's 3 spots. We've only got 2 flags here. I did call Chief Chips at Chiano First Nations today to get his input on both the Pride flag and the Canadian flag in the chambers. He has no problem with either, and he was particularly supportive of the Pride flag, being a school district trustee and responsible for youth education. So I've done that in terms of due diligence. So I would like to have the Canadian flag here, and I would also like to fly the Pride flag between June 29th and July 9th. And then I would also like to bring in a flag protocol similar to that of Souk. That was recommended by that particular district protocol was recommended by the fire chief.
So Mayor Little, the Pride flag would then go in place of the district flag?
Yes, and that's what we customarily do when we fly the Legion flag in November around Remembrance Day.
Okay.
Yeah. And does anybody have any objections? I don't mind. If you have objections or comments, go ahead.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, good. And you see I strategically placed this later on in the agenda. Okay, so seeing that, I'm going to call the question on both of those, flying the Canadian flag.
No motion is made.
Sorry?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Yeah. I move that we fly the Pride flag during the same week as the Victoria Pride Week on our outside flagpole in place of the district flag, and that we put the Canadian flag in the council chambers.
And consider a protocol similar to Souk.
Sure, why don't we bring, so that would be the motion, I guess. You want me to add the,
Yeah.
and bring in and ask staff to bring a recommendation on a flag protocol, keeping in mind the one that's available to look at in Souk.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Shukin. Discussion. Go ahead.
I just want to say I appreciate their due diligence. This is something that's very, very important, I think, in our community. I know, talking about the Scout youth earlier, they learn a lot about the etiquette of flags and the history and where and why and how and all that sort of stuff. So I think this is an important symbolism to acknowledge all sorts of people, inclusion.
Okay.
Remembrance Day, Pride, all of that. So I
Great.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That's unanimous. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Epp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. That was 5 hours and 40